All right, guys, welcome. Welcome to another episode of Expanding the Conversation with Richard and Kofi. Today, we want to talk a little bit about stepping out of our comfort zone. And I know this is something that we all struggle with, particularly in a technological dispensation. But largely, I think it's something that tends to follow us as being part of just the way we think we get very comfortable with a particular situation or particular lifestyle. And it sort of sets the boundaries for what we are secure with and what we know. And then if we feel like we have to step out of that, step into what may be for us the unknown, we often get very scared. And so we want to talk about how we deal with stepping out from our comfort zone into new territory. Let me kick it to Richard for a little bit to say hi and maybe tell us a little bit about how he deals with the situation.
Yeah, hey guys, welcome. Thanks for joining us. This is something that as I dug in a little bit more, Kofi, over the last couple of years into the world of personal development, you realize that it's a big statement, right? Stepping outside of your comfort zone, everything that you want exists on the other side of your comfort zone, and we hear it all the time. And to be honest, I think it's probably one of the hardest things to do, right? Because as human beings, we crave comfort, right? If you ask somebody, describe to me your greatest day or what's your ideal life, it's filled with comforts, right? It's luxury and not a lot of hard work, not a lot of difficulty, not a lot of intense anything. And so we generally tend to associate comforts with a quality life and to some extent happiness, right? Like I think so.
Yeah.
So we've sort of put comfort on this pedestal. And it's not to say that any of that is untrue, but I think the idea that our best selves or our best yet to be discovered selves actually lies outside of our comfort zone. And there is certainly a process that one can go through to sort of gently push that comfort zone, and become comfortable being uncomfortable, and then start. I think once you sort of identify the values of being outside of your comfort zone, you start to almost crave it, right? Because you're like, okay, like I know that I'm getting too comfortable. How can I really stretch myself, right? How can I think and do something that's different? And one of the things that I often that I've learned and I say to people is that, like, when you step outside of your comfort zone, it's supposed to feel like at a molecular level, like every cell in your body is supposed to feel the impact of it, right? Because it's sort of like it's uncomfortable, right? It's not something that you've done before, or you feel like there's a high chance that you might fail, right? And if you failed a couple of times, then you tend to think that there's a higher potential for failure, right? But I think you have to be willing to take that step outside of your comfort zone. And I guess what that means to me, Kofi, is if I'm doing something outside of my comfort zone, one, like it's supposed to feel uncomfortable, and I mean mentally, physically, like your body really does respond to it, right? In sort of like not a positive way. It's not like you're excited. It's like you're nervous, right? Sometimes you start sweating. So that's one. Two, I think it's almost like, to some extent, stepping out of your comfort zone almost forces you to either learn to do something better, like either go read up on something, go learn to do something physically different. So it requires some learning, right? But it forces you to learn rather than wait until you've learned this thing to go into your comfort zone. I certainly think that you can learn about something and then go do it, and it's also a step outside of your comfort zone. But being outside of your comfort zone, I think often means that you're a little outside of your competency. And so it
Right.
forces you to upgrade your competency in order to be able to
Right.
function in that area. And so that's sort of what I view the definition of being outside of your comfort zone. And then, as you said, we all struggle with this, right? Because, like, again, like if I'm comfortable, and the more comfortable you get, right, the more success you have. The more physical comforts you maybe acquire, the more experiences you have, it really does become harder to step outside of your comfort zone, because, like, well, life's already good, right? It's like, I always use this, and I tell you about running, right? Like, running is sort of like the most illogical thing ever, right? Like, people run either to save their lives, or maybe you run to get food, or something like that. But now when you go out and you run just for exercise and, sort of mental clarity, it goes against the odds, right? So there's no logic to it. Like, why would somebody be running? Like, nobody's chasing you. And I think that's sort of some elements of it, right? Like you've got to maybe push a little bit harder. Some people, maybe it's easy to be uncomfortable because they've always been uncomfortable, and then for some, they've been comfortable for so long that the idea of being uncomfortable just is uncomfortable.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So those
So,
are a couple of things. I don't know what your definition of being outside of your comfort zone is.
first, let me talk about being in a comfort zone. Is I think there's no growth in a comfort zone, right? The comfort zone is I've achieved certain things, and everything has basically gone into sort of a steady state. And in steady state, there's really no increase, right? There's no change, and there's a definition of steady state. And so what I feel like comfort zone is just a place of no change, a place of no growth, a place of no real achievement, even though one could feel like you're moving. For example, you could be in a treadmill running, and you feel like you're going somewhere, but really you're in one spot the whole time. And I think that's probably part of what a comfort zone looks like, right? It's this trap of training. It's that you're just sitting there. I was told a story once of an eagle that was captured by a hunter, and the eagle was chained to a tree in a yard. And for a year or so, the eagle would walk around this tree. And he walked around the tree so much that he actually made a marking in the grass. And someone came by and talked about how sad this was, and decided to set the eagle free. And then he tried to usher the bird to fly, and the bird continued to go in a circle because the bird had become comfortable in that position. Right, he had become through a traumatic experience. Nonetheless, he'd become very comfortable in that zone, almost trapped in there. It became all he knew. But he'd been filled with so much potential, and the only way, of course, he could get out of this is that he actually had to go off and fly again, right? Go to new heights. And I think of a comfort zone sometimes as not necessarily a trapping in life, but life gets us to a place where we hit steady state, and then we're basically just going with the flow. But we know that we can achieve more. We know we can do more. And so for me, the first thing is there's no growth in a comfort zone. There's no real achievement in a comfort zone. We're really just going around in circles. The big challenge comes, Richard, is when you want to break out of that zone, there's a lot of fear. And I think it's one of the things we want to be able to deal with, right? And I want people to understand that there's a lot of fear. For example, using us as an example, right? You want to go live, or you want to go talking about in today's world, you have a message and you want to talk to people about it, right? You want to go on Facebook, you want to go on Instagram, or you want to put something out. And I am talking about real content, right? Because there's a lot of fake stuff that people put out, talking about putting yourself out there. Um, and so here you are, you're worried about how you're going to be perceived. You're worried about what people are going to think about you. You're usually very protective of your identity. You're usually very protective, right, of who you are. You don't want to be vulnerable. You don't know who's going to see you. They're going to have negative comments, right? And that stuff can freeze people, right? People get petrified by that thought of criticism. It hasn't even happened yet. And some of us will choose not to because that feels uncomfortable. You know, public speaking, for example, is one of the biggest fears that people have because they have to stand in front of people and talk, and they're so concerned about what people are going to say about them. And this is one of the things I love about going into a comfort zone is that you begin to grow and you begin to learn and you begin to confront your fears. And if you're able to do that and get comfortable with that, then you begin to ask yourself, what else can I take on, right? There's this personal sense of achievement that comes from getting out of that comfort zone, making yourself uncomfortable, dealing with those fears, right? Tackling those fears, and then just pushing through. Sometimes you realize they're not even such big fears. To tell you the truth, it's all in your mind, right? But being able to break through and go to the other side where real achievement and growth exists.
Yeah, you touched on a couple of things there, Kofi, that I think is key. One, sort of seeing failure as more of a teacher than an indication that
Yes,
you've done something wrong, right?
right,
Uh, and that's one of the biggest things, right? Because if you fear failure, then you fail the lesson and you miss the lesson. So I think you certainly have to be willing to face failure, but I think if you see failure as a teacher, then it's probably a lot easier to face failure as you step outside of your comfort zone. But maybe we can sort of back up a little bit, Kofi, and talk about like how does one get outside their comfort zone, right? Because I think there is, if you're sort of going along in your everyday life and you're good, you've got a job, you've got your family, you do your thing, and it begs the question, okay, so what is outside my comfort zone? And I think it also sort of some of it goes back to sort of where you're heading, and what you want to do, right? Because you have to start with that intention, and then uh, I think it's important that you sort of become aware of what is outside of your comfort zone, right? So that you can maybe write that down and think about what do you consider outside of your comfort zone, because
right,
like there's a process, right? Like we know there is a process to most of the things that we can do around sort of getting better. So I think that the first step that I would say is become aware of what's outside of your comfort zone. Maybe become very clear about what is it that you're aiming, what is it you're trying to overcome, right? As a result of getting outside of your comfort zone, and then maybe taking some baby steps towards it.
right. To get there.
And I don't know if you've got sort of your own process,
Oh,
that you go through, but maybe you can share some of those with us, and then we can.
mine comes from Mel Robbins, man. The 5 second rule. This is how I break out of my comfort zone. I try not to overthink it. Um, so there are times when you're going along and a great idea comes up. And this might be on smaller things, right? Not necessarily changing your whole life in a big deal, but there's this idea of the 5 second rule where if I think of something, I've basically got 5 seconds to go write it down and start executing it. Because chances are, if you wait and you don't capture that thought and idea and really develop it, what's going to happen is you're going to defeat it, right? Because this is the challenge with coming out of your comfort zone. Your mind is trained to keep you there, right? Because it likes comfort. Everything is safe, as you said before. So what I find is I'm going to start to explore those ideas of, all right, here's where I want to go. This idea might seem radical, but I'm going to embrace it and think about it a little bit more. I'm not going to shut it down in the first 5 seconds, right? Or the time that comes after that. So within those first 5 seconds, I'm going to go run it down, think about it. I'll call a friend, I'll text somebody, hey, what do you think about this? Um, and even in those cases, right, like you have to know who you're sort of connected with, because I don't even think you have to necessarily tell somebody, because they might introduce another set of fears to you to kind of shut it down. But I think you just have to know. I really, to tell you the truth, I don't know if I could teach this, right? But the idea is, in your heart that, look, I've got to do this. and you've got 5 seconds to think about it. That's one way to be honest, that's one way I think about it. And so I'm going to start developing and working in that idea, start giving it some thought and start pushing it and start having conversations with it. But I'm going to embrace it. And I think that's one of the things we can use. I mean, I know there are other tools. For example, you just kind of laid out one, which is to write down and strategically think about the things that you might be afraid of. Think about your fears. Think about what your challenges might be, and then start looking to see how other people may have overcome that. There's some other strategies like when I'm talking, for example, you practice, they say practice in front of your family. If your fear, for example, is addressing people publicly, you start talking to your family, your friends, you talk to yourself in the mirror. If there are things about the way you talk that you might be concerned about, right? Practice. So a lot of practice sometimes helps. But I'm saying all that to say, Richard, is we shouldn't get bogged down even with preparation in that sense, right? Sometimes you just have to get up and go do it, right? You know that you want to achieve something bigger in your life, right? You know that you want to do something bigger in your life, and I think you just have to get started. It's not going to be perfect, and I think we have to accept that. And you just get up and you get started. I mean, that's the most general way I can put it, because I think this differs for everybody, but there are little things depending on who you are and what your um, uncomfortable zone might look like, that you might be able to push through. But for me, I find that the 5 second rule works for me. If I think of something, and like for one of the things I said to you the other day is that we've been having conversations about a lot of things for a long time, and I find that those conversations tend to help. And I think that's probably another good thing too, right? Getting into the company of people that can help push you into that uncomfortable zone as well, right? To pull you out of your comfort zone. That's probably another great way to help, right? Is encircling yourself with people who don't just sit down in their comfort zone, but they're always pushing the envelope on things as well.
Yeah, that's a big point there. You've got to hang out with people that are taking a little bit more risk in life, and seems like they're on that sort of a different growth trajectory. Because I think, if, as you said, if you share your ideas with people that aren't in that mindset or aren't taking some risk in their personal lives, then chances are like you'll kill it.
Exactly.
And the thing is, though, I think that's also important. I mean, I think maybe you've probably been outside of your comfort zone for a long time, so the 5 second rule
I
is
am
great,
right
right?
now.
Like, yeah. um, but I also think like there's it doesn't necessarily have to be um it doesn't necessarily have to be anything drastic, right? It could be just some incremental steps and
Yes.
something that you're already doing, right? So let's say, um, and I like to use sort of health as an example, right? Let's say you know that you want to be healthier and you just want to take one simple step, right? And so you add something else, whether it's like, for a Guyanese person, eating a whole salad as a meal and trying to go to the next meal on a salad, right? So we don't do that.
A
But
meal
but but
without rice.
yeah, something as simple as that. But so like it's important to understand that you can take baby steps outside of your comfort zone, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a giant leap. But as you get more comfortable with the discomfort, I think you start really, taking some bigger steps outside of your comfort zone. And it's gonna, like, you're probably gonna fail a lot, right? It's not
Yeah.
the same, but you're gonna learn a lot of things, and that's sort of important. But you're right. You have to be in company of people that are taking risk as well, or that are stepping outside of their comfort zone. Because one, you can learn from them, but they'll also probably never talk you out of stepping outside of your comfort zone, and I think that's key. But also, one of the things I'll probably add in closing on my end is, um, because stepping outside of your comfort zone just for the sake of, I think, and this is from a personal perspective, it means nothing. I think you've got to be able to see how stepping outside of your comfort zone aligns with sort of a greater goal, maybe that you're aspiring to achieve, right? And so I think once you can establish, where your comfort zone is, or what is outside of your comfort zone, how does that sort of associate to how is that related to where you're heading? Then I think you probably can, because a lot of it is sort of a mental thing, right? I think it's a little bit easier to then take those steps because I understand that what stepping outside of my comfort zone means to
Yeah.
my greater goals and where I'm heading. And it doesn't have to be giant leaps. I think small steps consistently can really get you to a great place. But you ought to be able to. I like process, and so I try to think about process when it comes to a lot of things. And I know that's not always a great thing, but I think process is replicatable, right? Like you can have a process. You can take something that you think you want to work towards. You know that you don't know. You know that you're uncomfortable in that zone, and then therefore you can take some measures to slowly get outside of your comfort zone, and then eventually your comfort zone becomes so wide that most things it just seems like it's
Yeah.
sort of where you should be.
Yeah. I think you want to get in the habit of pushing yourself into the uncomfortable zone, and become comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it's a skill to learn, right? It is a skill to learn to be uncomfortable. You have to become, yeah, it sounds like an oxymoron, but you really want to become comfortable with being uncomfortable, and setting up yourself to succeed. Because as I said, there is no growth in the comfort zone. You got to push outside of it to get to where you want to go, and whatever that means to different people. And like you said, little steps would be helpful. I think that's it, man. I hope people benefit from this. Like I said, step out of your comfort zone. Push yourself harder and harder to get to where you want to go, and don't stop. Don't take no for an answer. Just keep going.
Yeah. Thanks, guys, for joining us. We're much tougher than we know, but we'll only know that unless we test the limit. So I'm gonna
Exactly.
sign you up to run a virtual 10K at Kofi. Now that you comfort zone.
Yeah, let's Richard, you said small steps. Let's start with a one. Let's start with a 1K, buddy.
All right, that's fine. All right, guys. We'll see you
Take
next
it easy,
time.
man.
All
All
right.
right, cool. Bye.